In this video, I'm going to walk you through a field-by-field review of the ITAM contract record in Flexera 1. The credentials you will need to perform this function in IT asset management is the default operator role or higher. Let's get started. From the procurement menu, we're going to navigate to the very top where it says All Contracts. You'll see I have 3 contracts here. You have the ability to search with the same tools that you have throughout the interface. This is also where you would create a contract. To create a contract, you would want to select the contract type from one of the options on the screen, and then you would get a blank contract record to populate. I'm going to open up one of our contracts here, and we'll walk through the various sections of the contract record. I'm going to open up this IBM master contract, and we are on the general tab. First field is the contract number. This can be alphanumeric, and this should be the unique identifier of your contract. You will also have the ability to set a status for your contract. In our case, this one is an active contract. You would also populate a description. Keeping in mind standard descriptions can be very helpful. It is often the way that you search within the system itself. The contract type is software license. In the purchase program, we could select. In this case, I'm going to select this is a IBM Passport Advantage. I'm going to see that our primary vendor is IBM. That can be searched for through those vendors. You want to make sure your vendor record is created before starting that contract. You can link it to a master contract if you so choose, and so if this is a subordinate type contract, you could link that to a master. In this case, we've called this a master, so there would be subordinates potentially underneath this contract here. The next field is if this is a new contract replacing a previous contract, you could link to the previous contract where you can navigate easily from the old contract to the new contract within the system. You can also set a category like all records within the system, and you would do so by just searching your categories and adding that to the field. This next section is events. You have evergreen. You have a toggle of yes or no. Evergreen yes means the contract does not have an expiry date, and the expiry date would be grayed out. In our case, it is evergreen no, which means it does support an expiration date of the contract. You can see I have the start date of the contract, the expiration date of the contract, when the contract was last renewed populated, and when the next renewal is due. There's also a place for you to set a review date to determine when the next time you need to review this contract is. You have an area for payments. You have a global amount, a monthly amount, and you do have an information notes field. Note, this is not the only place you can manage payments. This is to manage the contract value at a high level. We do have a payment schedule section that we'll be referring to. Next tab is the ownership tab. The ownership tab, if this contract is for a specific location, corporate unit, or cost center, you could populate that by clicking search and looking at your enterprise group data. In our case, this contract is for all entities within the company, and so we are leaving those blank on this contract. Next tab is vendors. Vendors is where you can have additional vendors or third-party vendors that can fulfill against this contract. And this is where you would populate them. These vendors would need to be in the previous vendor table that we discussed. Next tab is purchases. If a purchase was put into the system and the contract was notated on that purchase, then those purchases would show up linked to their appropriate contract. In this case, I have 5 purchases that are linked to this particular contract. You can also search purchases here and add them from the contract itself, or you can simply link each purchase line to its appropriate contract when they are imported into the system. Next tab is licenses. Licenses would be any licenses that are associated with this contract. So if a purchase was created and it was processed to a license, then that license would get added. In this case, I have one IBM license here. I can also search my license portfolio for publisher IBM. If all IBM licenses are associated with this particular contract, I could highlight those and add those licenses. The next tab we're going to review is the use rights and rules. I'm going to collapse these. These are the various use rights that are on a license record. License consumption rules, upgrade rights, downgrade rights, right of second use, right of multiple use, rights on virtual machines and hosts, processor limits, and license mobility rights. The reason for those rights to be listed on a contract, it could be that you have negotiated special terms around these product use rights above and beyond what our product use rights library would set up for you. In that case, you can have it pull that use right from the contract so you can take advantage of the special terms for product use rights and rules that you had negotiate through your contract. Our next tab is responsibilities. On the responsibilities tab, you're going to search for users to add as a responsible party. You can see I have one added here already, user 1. He's been added as a contract manager. You can have multiple responsible parties on a contract. On that user's record, under responsibilities, they would be listed under contracts, or there is also a responsibility for licenses, which we'll get to in a later section. You can assign responsibilities of contract manager, interested party, negotiator, owner, point of contact, signatory, or unspecified is how they would default to until you assign a responsibility. You also have the ability to put comments with that, and you also have the ability to add additional information from the employee record, should you so choose, to that view. Keep in mind, you can have multiple people with responsibilities under a single contract. This next section is payment schedules. And if you are managing payments and those payments are against a contract, then you would build a payment schedule for that. I have one already built, but if you were to build one, you would click Create a Payment Schedule. And before I do so, I'm going to save my record here. And you would simply click Create a Payment Schedule. You would have the name of the payment schedule, the contract it's linked to, the payment schedule type, the contract type, the metric, and you can link this payment schedule to any assets associated with the linked contract. You'll also have a notes field. You can set up installment plans, a frequency of monthly, lump sum, quarterly, or weekly, and payment terms beginning or end of each period or prepay. You can also have the start date and the end date. By putting the start date and the end date, it can calculate the number of installments that are needed. If my end date was set to a year out, then it would give me 12 installments. I can also mark this obligated to pay by clicking this tick box here. I could also provide an actual fixed amount if I know the amount of that monthly payment, or if the amount varies based on volume or how things are utilized, then you could provide an estimate and a budgeted amount as well to those payment schedules. I'm not going to click create there. I already have one created for us, so let's go back and look at that. Once you have those set up, you will have your general information on the general tab of your payment schedule. You will see the installments that were created. You can add an installment, you can mark an installment paid, or delete an installment right from inside there. Any assets that are linked to that, and any licenses that are linked to that as well. You could also see a history of the payment schedule tab. Our next area is terms and conditions. You can have multiple terms and conditions on a contract. What terms and conditions are things that have to happen within the contract period. If you notice on our general tab, we have a start date and an end date. But what if there are obligations or things that you have to tend to in between those, such as a quarterly report might be due, or there might be a price change or something? You would create a term and condition on there by clicking create. And we have several types here. We have a obligation, a limitation, when things expire, when prices change, renew, review, and those. So you can add various terms and conditions with dates under a single contract. And so you would establish a begin date and an end date and comments, a descriptor, and reference any documents, and you could save those. I have one created here that we created that we'll be looking at when we look through our views. This is terms and conditions. And again, these are things that need to be managed by date, and those dates are in between the start date and the end date of that contract. Next tab is documents, which we've reviewed in several other modules, but it is a place where you can attach a copy of the contract, point to a file location or a URL of the contract, and attach that to the contract record itself. And each contract record has a history tab as well.